Hi friends, it's Sarah from rufflesandrainboots.com and I'm sharing needle felted canvases today. I'm going to show you how to make some adorable gnomes using some wool, and I'm also going to tell you why I absolutely hate this one. If you'd like to make them, stick around. As always, please like this video so I know you're here crafting. Now, many of you know I live in Seattle, which is surrounded by nothing but water, and that means we have a lot of bridges. Like, we have floating bridges, we have rickety bridges. It's not true. And we even have bridges with trolls that live under them. True story. But when this one goes down, this is the big bridge, Sarah learns a new craft while sitting in her car. So in order to get started, we're going to need an embroidery hoop. This one's 7 inches. You need a silhouette of some kind for whatever you're going to make, and you'll need some needle felting needles, wool roving. There's a whole bunch of different kinds out there, and I'm using wool locks for the beards. Okay, so I'm going to show you 2 different types of needles. You can get these in any kit on Amazon. I'll link the ones I got below. But I'm just going to put it in this little wood thing and stick this little wood thing on it. That's it. That's how you load a needle. And you will need quite a few. All right, so I'm going to take the inside of my embroidery hoop and I'm going to make sure it's a few inches away from the edge of just a piece of felt. So this is just craft felt that you get at the craft store. I'm going to use pins to let me know where my edges are, and then that'll help me decide, like, if you didn't already have a drawing, like how big of a piece you need. And so you can just stick your hoop back on. Like, this is the one I used in my car. I literally just drew it freehand on a piece of yellow paper. And so I'm going to use the base and I'm just going to freehand the hat here. So you can use anything. All of my SVGs of my gnomes, you can use any of those. Those are in the shop. There's a lot of free ones, but then you get to choose your colors. So the thing about wool roving is you can see they're very different textures. I'll show you in a little bit my favorite kit that I got. But to break it apart, you do not need scissors and you don't yank it. You just gently pull it and it comes right away. It's really cool. The tensile strength of this stuff all together. It's really neat. But we're just going to start with a little piece here. And to get started, you just roll the end underneath, not a whole lot, just a little bit so those fibers aren't just sticking out every which way. And then you're just going to place it, I'll show you where my outline is right here. You're just going to place it right along that outline and you're just going to start dabbing. Now I am on a felted wool or a wool pad, so you're going to have something under you that isn't your desk or anything you really like. Some people use a rolled up towel, but I just say, you know, there's a ton of different wool things that you can put your stuff on and push your needle into. And speaking of pushing your needle, you're just going to push it straight down. So you'll see me go sideways when I'm tucking in some edges or starting something. But for the most part, in order to avoid, you know, stabbing yourself, you just go straight down. So this is sped up, but my process is basically just take a little bit of the wool, bunch it up, and then gently move my piece, because you see underneath, that is what you're doing. You're actually stabbing that through the wool. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple tips. The first tip is to scrunch up the wool. It's really easy just to gently push it up. They do make little leather guards for your fingers, so your index finger and your thumb, you can get those. I've only stabbed myself a handful of times. I mean, yeah. Anyway, the next tip I have for you, just moving on to the tips, just bypass that whole stabbing thing, is to define the edges. And to define the edges, you're just going to needle felt those a little bit more. If you start a new piece, you're just going to do exactly what we did before, and that is to fold over the edge and put it right next to where you ended so you can blend those 2 pieces. And you can see it goes pretty fast. So the brown one I showed you earlier took me 45 minutes in the car. It was the very first one I ever did. I will make a tip that says to define your transitions, because it just makes everything so much easier. If you want a very blended look, then don't define them. But when I was going to make my nose, I needed those edges very defined. So in order to make something like a nose or your feet, we're just going to roll up the wool a little bit and then roll in the edges. And so you're stabbing it all of the way and just sort of making those fibers stick to each other, because there's these little barbs on these special needles and they're pulling the wool through the wool a lot. So you can see here, I'm just going to roll it, pull the edge in like this, and then stab it a whole bunch more times. There you go. Roll it again, stab it, roll it again, stab it. It's pretty fun, to be honest. But so I did a little bit of a naughty thing here. I made a whole nose, and that means that I have to go and grab a couple of other pieces of wool when I go to attach it. But this is the kit I absolutely love. It has tiny little colors, but it's great. It's like a rainbow of happiness when you open the box. So I'm going to choose this teal color, and look, one more beautiful rainbow. Okay, so I'm going to choose this teal color. I honestly had to get a little bit more wool only because I didn't know how much I was going to need. I'm not an expert at this. I've only made 4 of these things so far. But what I did do is I made sure to stop when I was starting a new thing. So like for the shoes, I just grabbed a piece of wool, split it equally in half, and then kind of started a little bit and then put it onto my piece so I could make the entire shoe. Unlike the nose, I realized, well, now I'm gonna have to put some extra felt on this to attach the nose. So I just did, you can see my 2 little shoes here in black. Doesn't take very long at all, but I love how it's all bumpy and textured. All right, so I'm just going to be evening everything out down here at the bottom. Just by folding this over, I'll be adding a little bit more between the shoes, and I'm just doing it so that I can even out the bit right at the bottom of the gnome, because all that stuff under the nose, that's going to be hidden. In order to even everything out, if you do get one of these 6 or 8 needle, I call it the big fella, A, keep your hands away from it, and B, it's great for evening out the pieces. So as I mentioned that I made a nose with no leftover tail, and so I'm going to have to put a couple of pieces. So I started one and just put it all along the top, and then I added another one and put it along the bottom. And that basically allowed me to define the edge of the nose, but also just to make sure everything adhered. So I put the nose overlapping the gray and the blue. All right, so once that was on, I wanted a little bump out for my hat, just like that scrunch that I love when I make my gnomes. So I just folded over this piece here and just defined it a little bit. I did make sure all of the wool was down. So I had to add a little bit at the bottom there after using a piece of holographic vinyl to see if it was even. For the beard, I'm taking an individual wool lock and then I'm starting in the middle. And so what that means is I'm gonna lay over the wool up over the nose, tack it down, and then fold it back down on itself. And that way it looks really full and you don't need a lot. I tacked down a little bit at the bottom of the beard as well so that it would just make sure that it would stay. And here he is up close. To get him ready for his big show, we're going to lint roll your piece and then get the inside of the embroidery hoop. Just the inside is all you need in the beginning. Do make sure that you're making it even so you can get the tape measure out like me if you want, or just eyeball it. So what you're going to do is push it on here and make sure you get it on pretty tight, but don't tighten it until you've pulled it taut. So we want to make sure that this, it's like embroidery, right? You want to make sure it's really stretched over the edges. Then once you have it tied down, we're going to make the back all fancy. I'm going to put a little hanger and a little button. And if you would like to do that too, with this guy, I'm going to show you how to do all of it. So the first thing you need is another piece of felt. It's big enough for the back of your embroidery hoop. Your finished piece, some embroidery thread, and a large darning needle. You can also have pins to hold on your back piece, scissors, and then I use these wooden buttons that I had made. I'll give the link down below to that shop. I love them. They say Ruffles and Rain Boots and have a gnome on them. All right, so the first step is to actually cut the edges of our piece. So do leave a couple of inches because we need that to pull everything together. Don't throw everything away though, because we need to cut our hanger. You can make any hanger you want. This is just the one I found the most easy. So I just cut a little rectangle that was proportionate to my hoop. And then I tuck everything under and get a rough outline of my embroidery hoop so that I can cut my backing. You will notice that I cut this down because I'm pulling it so tight when I finish it up. Okay, so the first step, load up your embroidery thread with a knot and then make a running stitch all along the outside. It goes really quick. I tend to listen to Audible books when doing stuff like this. All right, so pull the two pieces. When you end on the outside, you're just gonna pull those taut and then double knot them. Or if you're like me, triple knot them because you're paranoid. All right, but make sure it's tight because we want that to sit flat. I then attach to my button and then my hanger just with a few X stitches on the top there. And now I'm gonna pin down the back all the way, like felt to felt, right? So we're not touching that embroidery hoop at all. We're just pinning to the felt. So you're going to start underneath with a knot in it. You're going to start underneath that piece of felt you just placed on your backing, and then you're going to go into the backing. You see how I'm at the bottom layer there? And then you're going to pull it, just go over the edge. It's a simple stitch. This doesn't take any time at all. Again, I'm a big fan of Audible. I was listening to The Historian. If you've never read it, it's pretty fun. If you like Bram Stoker. All right, so I'm just going to do this all the way around, about a 1/2 inch away. I did do a little bit smaller on some places in this one because I was so lost in my book. All right, so once I'm about 2/3 the way through, I pull it taut again, I cut off any excess, and then I just finish it all the way around. And if you do have to start a new piece, it's no big deal. Just grab a new piece of thread, knot it underneath, and start it all over. Once you've double knotted it at the end, you're done. Look, you're all done. All right, so which one do I have a love-hate relationship with? It's this one. A little Christmas tree, a little gnome couple, and the absolute worst embroidery writing in the whole world. I'm not good at it yet. All right, but this one is my favorite. I do love him so much, those neutrals. But what do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Will you try this? I've had such a good time with this. As always, thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe for more crafty fun.